Oh, I mean, I think like I really want you guys to help Gen X understand the sexuality spectrum because it's such a hard or it's such a different new concept that I feel like your gen really understands and we don't. Like were brought up with like such a different rigid understanding of sexuality and you guys understand it so well. I mean, like my first question is like, are we all lesbians? You know?
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
everyone is a little.
like
A
are
little.
we
I
just
remember,
all lesbians?
but I was gonna say I remember before I even like started learning about the sexuality spectrum or like even like experimenting myself with like anyone. I remember always being in like middle school and like saying like me and my girlfriends would always be like everyone's a little gay, and if you're like not a little gay you scare the shit out of me. Like that's something we would say when we were like literally 12 to like 15, when we didn't even know, like, you know, we were just like having fake little boyfriends, you know what I'm saying? But because girls are so naturally like inclined to one another, like we would all just be like everyone's a little gay, you know? Like that was a joke we had.
It was like back years ago, like you would have like your one most progressive, cool friend in the group who would throw out maybe like after a night of drinking, like, well, you know that sexuality is a spectrum. Like, you know, according to Kinsey, sexuality is a spectrum, but it wasn't like a concept that I even really knew what they were talking about. And it was only like this thing that we understood, our old ass crusty Gen Xers understood within this concept of like Alfred Kinsey. Like, do you guys even know about like the Kinsey spectrum
The
of
Kinsey scale,
sexuality?
yeah.
Thank you. So the Kinsey scale is like this dude way back in, I'm just going to explain this like super fast about like the like very crusty scale of sexuality that we understood. But Alfred Kinsey like came out with the sexuality spectrum and he talked about it, what was it, like way back in the like the 40s, and he basically
40s or
kind of what
I
Harper?
was gonna say, yeah, like early 1900s, like 40s.
Yes, and Marli kind of said that like everyone's a little gay, or just like that sexuality isn't hetero and it isn't homo, which is like what everybody thought at the time. It
Yeah,
was like you could be a 0 or you could be an 8. You could be hetero or you could be a little bit gay, or you could be like sort of attracted to women or and like a little bit attracted to men. And like there's actually a scale, there is a spectrum of sexuality. And that's the first time I'd ever even heard people talk about that or any even learned that concept was from like the Alfred Kinsey scale. But now I feel
yeah.
like your generation has like taken that and been like blown it up to the point of like, no, like there's like actually not even hetero and homo. It's like we are all fluid. Like, like why are we even talking about labels?
Right.
Yeah.
I think like a big thing that's like changed over the years is like the like people love to label humans. Like people just love to put you in a box. They love to be like, she's a straight woman in her 30s who all she does is work and like she's never gonna have kids or get married. Like that's just like a stereotype thing. People love to put you in a box. I actually like listened to someone do a debate speech on that like last year. But it's so stupid because you step back from it and you're like, why? Like what is the benefit of putting someone in a box? Like what's the point? Like what's the big difference if someone identifies as like straight or like bisexual, you know? And I think that's something that's like grown for sure. It's just like why does it have to be black or white?
Yeah, totally. And like I feel like at one point you kind of said something to me like that. Like I had asked you, you were talking about someone like a friend or something, and I said, "Oh, are they gay?" And then suddenly all of a sudden I felt like this like 1950s housewife. I
You felt
was
like
like,
an old ass.
yeah, like an old ass crusty Gen Xer, like I said. Like I was like, "Are they gay?" And you were like,
Are
"Well,
they
I
a
don't
homosexual?
are they
Homosexual?
homosexual?" And you were like, well, I don't know. And then you were like, I don't even know why it matters. Like, I don't know why we can't just like, hey, I'm going out with this person tonight because I met them and they're cool and then we're hanging out. And then I'm going out with this person tomorrow and we're hanging out. Like, it's all just fluid and it's all just like
Right.
hanging out with people. And you said it's all just like love and it's all just whatever. Like, I don't know why we're all like looking to identify, like, are they gay? Are they straight? Are they this? And you said that. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's because I grew up with like you were going to high school and you were like, oh, is that the gay kid? Is that the straight kid? Is that
Because it'd be
this?
like the one kid that was like blatantly gay, despite the
Yeah.
fact that like everyone else is a little gay. It's like the
But it's
scapegoat.
that
It's
we
like a
were
scapegoat
all
theory. It's like they're trying to be like, oh, like that's the gay guy. Like, these guys on the football team, they're not gay because there's one gay guy in the school. But like,
exactly, because you were the gay guy, right? You were the gay guy. There was the lesbian over there. And so you said that, and I was like, yeah, I don't even know why we're using this as a label anyway. Why am I asking you about their sexuality? Like,
right.
it's none of my business. And it's none of my business to label them. It's none of my business to label their sexuality.
Especially
Unless
we never like categorize straight people. Like if someone's straight, like we never ever like, oh yeah, like married to like she's married to a man, or like she's straight, or like when you're talking about someone, like it's very much obviously just like if you're anything other than straight, which is like weird too because that kind of like reiterates that like, oh, the straight is the norm, like that's like regular and stuff. But like if you're like beyond that kind of like 100% straight, then like it needs to be like labeled, like it needs to be like brought to attention. But it's just something so like unimportant to like a person. Like it genuinely is just like, because if you're straight, like it literally doesn't matter. But if you're gay, I mean, you Google a gay person and gay will immediately come up like in the auto filter.
It'll be like gay actor so and so steps out, blah blah.
A straight actor,
no, but never straight actor. Like
exactly. As I was doing like a little bit of research for this, the one thing I did find that I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes a little bit of sense, because I was kind of, I'd kind of written around that, like, oh yeah, like fluidity is so important and we should just like banish all the labels forever. And then I did find this thing that was like, there is like so much power in language, though. Like there's so much power in language and saying like I am gay, or I am bisexual, or I am pansexual.
That's because of like how society has structured it. You know what I'm saying? Because
like a necessary
because we are like taught to like almost think lesser of people that are not heterosexual. So then it's like they have to be this power group because they're like a minority almost, which is it's fucked up. But it's like, think about if the world wasn't structured that way. It's like, would gay be such like a powerful like word and like, group to be in?
It wouldn't be a minority.
Focus to like power in your own identity, because like there's not a societal respect
there's
for
not
it in the same way. No, like you have to like bring your own power to your identity through like like language and like pride.
That's so very true. That's so true. Yeah. So anyway, what I was saying, and I completely agree with you, Marls, was like, because it was kind of like, well, why do we need all these? I'm a pansexual, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's like, because it helps people kind of like see themselves when like you're kind of like, well, who am I? Oh, well, this is actually who I am, and I identify this way. But again, it's like, why do we need to talk about it to begin with? Right? Like,
because I always think about like, it's so like also provoked by the media and stuff. It's like, take away all like social media and like the news. And like also, I mean, I have a strong opinion that like gender and sexuality should have never been in politics in the first place, like a lot of people. So it's like, imagine if it was never political, right? People could just go around like dating whoever, saying whatever, and there would be no like norm or stereotype they would have to like, convince themselves they're a part of, because no one would like have an opinion on it out there, like it's just like humans being humans. Like if you go to the core of it, like we're just people, like having relationships with other people. And then because of like the hetero like normativity of the world, people think it's like so out of whack when you're not with someone of the opposite sex. But again, it's just because society has progressed that way. Like women barely had rights like 100 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like we are like the generation, I feel like, that's growing into it. So it's like, because I'm not going to say like, also, I think this is a good thing to point out, like as much as we definitely understand the gender spectrum and like sexuality spectrum more than your generation ever got like educated on it, I still definitely think there's a huge effect from like older people on our generation, because we are, like the generation that's like young adults right now. So it's like I had a lot of friends in high school still that their parents were like uncomfortable with them being anything but straight. And I remember one time I heard about this like guy that like his parents like kicked him out or something, like when I was like a junior in high school because he was gay. And I just thought that was insane, like so insane, because it's just also like that's probably half because his parents were scared how like society would perceive like their family, which is just so crazy because again, it's just a societal construct. It's nothing real. It's not like they're going to jail. It's not, you know, it's not like their son's a bad person because of it. But I think that definitely makes, you know, even people our age like scared to like come out and stuff. And that's why a lot of older people won't even come out because of those values that are so like instilled in them still. But yeah, it's just a social construct at the end of the day. It's crazy.
And like to circle back to the labeling, like I think that we use labels so frequently in order to like adhere to that like older generation and stuff. Like it's not as much to like categorize like ourselves,
but to help them.
Yes, but to help other people understand. Like if you just
like grandpa's like, is that person gay?
Yeah,
and it's like I don't know,
like
but like sure,
an old person that you like, you know, don't identify with like any specific sexuality and that it's fluid, it's a spectrum, is just gonna like probably like give them a brain aneurysm.
So you have to be like, well, there's gay, there's bi, there's straight,
so like
there's
it needs
pan.
to be like categorized just for other people's benefit, which is like obnoxious. But like
maybe it'll ease off as like generations continue. I don't know.
I feel like it was when I was about your age, maybe a little bit older. There was a big conversation, and I know that it really only it hasn't even come that far because there's still states. Gay marriage was like a big and I remember talking to grandma and grandpa about it, and grandma and grandpa, my parents, your grandparents, are very progressive. But I remember they, you know, that is such a leap. I mean, when I think about all of the mental leaps they have had to make in their lives, I just remember, and, you know, and they just wanted to learn about it. Like, tell me about gay marriage and what is this and like blah, blah, blah. And they were like, you know, should gay people get married and all this stuff? I mean, and now they would love every gay person to invite them to their wedding. I mean, you know, they've made that leap. But I was like, of course, like, why in the world wouldn't they be able to get married? That is so crazy. But it's like we were having that conversation 20 years ago. And the fact that what reminded me, Marls, was like the government is involved in that conversation is ridiculous.
It's not politics. Like it's human rights, and it never should have been or ever like
love is love.
Yeah, it had a place to be politics. Like for us to be able to like jurisdict people's relationships is actually crazy.
And what's crazy is like you can think about this for days. We could talk about this for days, like obviously. But if you think even deeper, like, you know, population control, like a lot of gay couples don't want to have kids or they're adopting, which is like good for foster care. It's good for kids who need families, you know, or they're like not having as many kids as a straight couple because they physically like can't, you know, like all this stuff. It's like gays make the world go round. Like stop discriminating against people. Like what it just should have never been political. Like I think I told you this too. Like this is just a really like another thing that makes you just step back and be like, what the hell? But I know I told mom this, like my mom when I was young, like before I like even like thought about like being anything like butt straight, because I've literally only ever dated men. But like I just remember being like, Mom, if I did want to like go on a date with a girl, like it's so weird that I'd have to like come out. Like people expect that you have to come out. Like Harper and I have talked about this like several times. Coming out was seemingly progressive years ago, but it's like not really that progressive when you're looking at it, because people are feeling the need to like be so scared and like internalize like, you know, who they are and who they love, so they can like have this big reveal to the world, like
as if it's a bad thing. Yeah,
it's like a big thing. Yeah, or it's like, you know, something bad or like to be discriminated against.
The same thing with labels. Like straight people don't have to do it. Like you're assumed straight unless like coming out.
Yeah, you come out, which is like bullshit. Crazy, like that's why I've never been one to like
heteronormativity.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna like come out because like I don't even know to label myself and I don't care what I am. It's like I like you if I like you, and like I'm 18. Like I'm gonna meet a million different types of people before I probably ever even settle down with someone. Like how would I just say, you know, I only want to like a man? Like I hate men for the most part. Like I love women at the end of the day. So it's like, why would you just be like, oh, I could never see myself being gay. Like, again, it's just those like social constructs. That's why like grandma and papa, like I'm so proud of them because they've had to jump so many levels, which like as they should, but at the same time, they were jumping levels because of the societal and like traditional constructs they grew up on. Like they had to jump like, be surprised because like I mean, for fuck's sake, like racism was still a thing when they were like born. Like that's fucked up. Like, yeah.
Well, I think what you were saying too is like I've heard a lot of like actors, just because that's who's interviewed. Like people will be like, well, when did you come out? Like a thoughtful, interview. And I've heard so many of them almost in like kind of a sharp way be like, I didn't. Like, why would I? Like, why would I come out?
Why should I have to? Like,
I'm just a person, and I'm like,
when were you going to tell us that you like women?
Yeah, like they're like, no, I just like am living my life, and like if people observe.
And what do you owe the world either? Like that's the whole thing at the end of the day. Like coming out to your family and whatever, like that's like still stupid in my opinion. I still think you shouldn't have to like make it a thing. I still think you should be able to go on a date with whoever, but that's way different than also having to like post it to your like Facebook and Instagram. Like that's a huge was a huge thing. People still do it, but like coming out on social media, you don't owe shit to the world. Like, and like you said, people do use like LGBTQ and like, hashtag gay, like whatever for like power because of like the derogatoriness that society has like put towards those terms, Do
you want to hear about some of the terms that I Googled? Googled sexuality. Okay. Abrosexual is having different levels of sexual or romantic attractions throughout your life, meaning you can change. Kind of what you were saying, Marli.
Well, I feel like, okay, so that's like on the topic of labels, like we've discussed, we kind of hate labels, but like we kind of just need them for like, older generations, I guess. But like that term you just described, that's just like being human. It's like, why do you need to put a label on it?
It just seems like sexual.
Right. Because it's like, as I grew up, I always just grew up, seeing like typically straight couples. And like I dated a lot of little boys when I was younger. But it's like, as you grow up, like you just like learn things and you like different people. But it's like not like you're changing as an entire person. You're literally just discovering new parts of yourself. So that's why I'm like, we don't need to term it. But like that is an interesting word. I haven't heard of
a lesbian for 2 years and I would never describe myself as that.
Yeah. Like it's very like ever changing. Like, do we even need to label it or is it just sexuality?
Aromantic is what I am right now as a person who is not interested in a romantic relationship at this point in time. I'm aromantic right now. Reciprosexual is a sexual orientation, which means someone who does not experience sexual attraction unless they know the other person is sexually attracted to them first.
See, I feel like that's also not a sexuality.
That's just like a mentality.
That's
like
just
I'm not
a state of
like I'm kind of that way too. Like if somebody's not like I'm not really attracted to people unless like they validate me for.
Yeah, but you're not like really? I'm a reciprosexual.
But you're like I'm a reciprosexual.
Like no,
but it's like we don't care. Like we don't care to like Google why we are only attracted to because we're just like I like what I like.
Like natural. Like it literally just seems like the progression of like my romantic interest like right now. And so like I don't like it's one of those things that like why would you
put yourself in a box?
Label? Yeah, like why can't I just be like, oh, I don't know. I mean, like I'm just sexually fluid or like I don't really know. Like just like unnecessary.
Yeah.
They say that Gen Z is in a sex recession. Do you feel like Gen Z is having less sex? Not that you know.
We're
hey, we know a thing or two about a sex recession.
But I think like maybe so, but like for a good reason. Like I don't know a lot of Gen Z because there's like 7 point whatever billion people in the world, but like at the same time, I feel like people are very focused these days on like spirituality and like finding themselves. And again, like you said, people are a lot more comfortable identifying as whatever and like not being straight. And so like maybe that would account for like less general like sex, if that makes sense,
I feel like we've also
you guys are just so much more. Oh, sorry, Harper, go ahead.
Culturally shifted like in our generation that like there's just so much less emphasis on like the importance of being in a relationship and like having a partner.
True, 100%.
Like I think it's very normal that like like our age people and people like older and stuff like being like a single in your 20s is like an empowering and like
yes
exciting
not
thing
being
and
married
stuff now.
like by 19.
Yeah, not like oh my god, you have 5 years to get married, or like you're gonna be alone forever. Like,
yeah.
So I think that could also be that too, because we like there's just not as much of a rush or like a necessity that like, oh, we've got to get married and start like pumping these kids out before we graduate college and stuff.
Well, I was going to say, you guys are so much more independent than my generation was at your age. At your age, like, we were all like looking to couple up by the end of college. I read a stat. I mean, again, talking about the leaps that like generations are making, like leaps. And I read a stat that like by 2034, 2036, like 45% of women my age between like 34 and 45 are going to be like single and childless and like living like a single life, which is a huge shift. A huge shift in mindset.
Yeah. I love it though. Like you and I always talk about this because you're like a woman in her 40s who has no desire to be married right now or like have kids, which is just like, again, starting to be kind of like normal, like as generations are growing older, but like never was normal. Like even today, like your mom is always like, you should get a house. And like, I just want her to find someone, blah, blah, blah. I mean, she's backed off a little because she realizes all you want in the world is your dog. But like, that's like, you're kind of like an example of like a minority woman, like type of woman, you know what I'm saying? Like at your age. Yeah. But it's like, also, if you look at like the divorce rates, like I'd say a lot of people around your age are starting to be more single because they're getting divorced. So it's like, guys, stop getting married at 19. Like you're just getting divorced in your 40s and then like realizing you're gay. But yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there was like, there still is a huge stigma about being single in your 40s, I think, as a woman or even a man, but there is like a shift, I think, that's happening. And it like feels really good as someone who is in that position to be like, all right, like, yeah, like maybe I was on to something.
Yeah. You're like, I know I wasn't like crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I know you guys thought I was crazy. Will you explain to me in your own words, what gender fluidity and what like sexual fluidity means?
So actually,
my crusty old Gen Z ass.
I just switched my major to psych. Everyone on the podcast. But in my sociology class, we just finished a unit about gender and sexuality. It was an awesome unit. I have like a super liberal professor who's awesome. But gender is like how you like actually identify like kind of like feminine or more like masculine, whereas sexuality, like in my opinion, is the type of people you're attracted to and like the types of relationships like you kind of want and desire. So that's the real difference. It's kind of like you, and if you're more feminine or like masculine and like which gender you associate more with, like male, female, non-binary, versus sexuality is like, I'm more into women, I'm more into men, I'm into both. Like those are how I define
But the thing with like the gender like spectrum and stuff too is like that is so much more complicated because like gender and like gender itself is an entirely socially constructed idea.
Oh yeah.
Like it does not exist. Like there's like, biological sex, which is like anatomy, but gender literally is not real. Like it's just like how like we have, as a society have perpetuated like what a man looks like.
A man should wear blue and like a woman should wear pink. Right. And the man should drive more than the woman should drive, and the woman should cook, and the woman should clean. Like those all fit into kind of like gender stereotypes, but like we say, like it's a social construct. Like 1000%. You could identify as like she, her, like you could like identify like she, her, I'm a woman, but you could dress like a man or dress more masculine, but like still be completely comfortable being a woman.
And that's like the difference between two of like gender identity and like gender expression, because like I like, I identify as like a woman, and I feel like I express my gender also in like a historically feminine way. But it's like just because somebody, like you were saying, like a person who like identifies as a woman but like dresses in a more masculine way, like that doesn't necessarily mean that like there's fluidity in their gender identity, maybe just their expression.
And it's awesome because like in college as a freshman, like we do talk about that in my sociology class, but again, like in institutionalized, you know, like K through 12 education, that's very untalked about. Like we
about
just
that in my classes that are specifically about like women's and ethnic studies,
but like we're adults and like colleges now, you know, it's so different that because it's like when you're K through 12, you need that education when you're starting to like experiment and like people are having sex, you know, in high school and stuff. You need that education, and sadly it's not there. We just like grew up in more liberal like families, so you know, we got some of that, but
and like with like the ability of like self-education and stuff now, like I feel like
the media,
like social media and internet and stuff, like we are so informed not because like we were given information and like
we want
like institutional and like institutional manners, like, you know, the news or like our schools and stuff, but like because of media and like hearing like other people's experiences and stuff too, like I think that's like really important for like education too.
I think like there's all this like conversation about like we shouldn't talk about that in schools to young kids, but at the same time, like what you just described, Harper, I think would help a young child like understand, oh, okay, gender is this, sex is that. I can wear boy clothes, but I'm still a girl, blah, blah, blah. It can actually help a lot of the confusion that parents think is going on, which is actually going on, where kids are saying, okay, well, I'm a boy now. And it's like, well, maybe you just want to wear boy clothes. You know what I mean? There is a lot of like stuff like that.
Like if you raise these kids on like
confusioning going on, but if you actually explained it in a way like that, then maybe there actually would be less confusion. Information is power.
Yeah, and people hate to like admit that would help their kid, because obviously people want to do what's best for their kid, but at the end of the day, it's not informing them and letting them do with that information what they want is helping your kid. Like we're not telling your kids they should be gay or be straight. You know what I'm saying? Like people have the ability to choose and like be who they are. And I think even like looking at kids our age and younger, like kids that are still in high school, a lot of kids were raised on black and white values still that are in high school. So they're very much like, well, maybe I do want to be trans, or maybe I'm just gay, or maybe I'm like whatever. And they're confused because they were never told those terms. Like I said, I just had a unit about these terms in a college sociology class. You know, so it's like we're not learning what Harper and I just described. We're not learning that in middle school, and we're not learning that in high school. We just had to go out and like research that ourselves. So that's definitely really sad, because it definitely would help people.
And like it all comes back to like labeling a little bit, which we've been talking about a lot. But like when we have just such like strict and like rigid like societal standards and like groupings and stuff for like how somebody should express themselves or like how someone should identify, it makes it really, really, really hard for people to like explore that. Because like if we like force, you know, that there's like, oh, there's gay and straight, or there's like, you know, cis and trans and stuff, like it's really difficult for people to like be able to like experience their own formation of like identity.
Yeah, especially I was gonna say like a good example of this is like men. I feel like coming out or just like being anything other than hetero has always been harder on men, just because of societal like constructs and expectations, like gender roles for like a typical like man, someone that like identifies as a man, like you know, biologically. And I think that it was always so hard because again, like even though we're 18, like we're so young, growing up before I got educated, like I'm talking like middle school and before, when I was young, I would like think, you know, like a gay guy is like a flamboyantly gay guy. Like he has pink nails and wears a tutu and like, you know, has like a wig or something, or like used to be raised on the ideas that like you were either like gay as hell or you liked the opposite sex.
That gay equaled like feminine acting.
Right, exactly. Like I was raised on that, and I'm 18.
And I think it's so much more like prominent with like men and like the way that we categorize like gay men because of like the like severe prominence of like hypermasculinity and like why like male gender roles are like so prevalent, and like the idea of just like, you know, the, you know, American like macho man like type like thing, that it's like even harder for people to like socially accept like a man breaking away from that like standard deviation, which is like
just let people be people.
Yes.
Well, I think the opposite happens too. Is like, I know this has happened, like this happens all the time, is where if a guy is like not like super masculine, then people are like, oh, he must be gay. And really he's just expressing his feminine side. Well, he's just more feminine. He's just like not, the hyper masculine macho.
But again, I think again it goes back to like we want to label them. We want to be like, that boy is gay because he's dressed. We must label someone. It's just ridiculous because it's like who cares? Like who cares?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, okay, a guy looks good in a dress. Like what's the problem? Like why do we have to go jump to like who he's dating, But as society, like we love that shit. Like we want to just talk about someone's gay or straight all the time. And I remember in my sociology lecture, my professor, like he put up on the screen like a fact from like the 1800s, I want to say, about how high heels were originally made for men. And it was so cool. Like I never knew that was a thing. But like, yeah, like it was made for men for something to do with like their like posture and height and whatever. Like it like complimented them in the 1800s. And if you've seen like Renaissance paintings or anything, men used to be like super like pretty and like glamorified and like people do their makeup. But then as these social constructs started existing and we started putting everything in the news and the media, then that became gay. It's like, it wasn't always like that, when
and
people.
I think it's so weird too that we have like one specific way of like seeing anybody that's different. Like if you like picture, like if somebody says like a gay man, like I think like innately like we all picture like a hyper feminine like gay man and stuff. Yeah. And like as like, I mean it happens with women too, because like as like a not straight like fairly feminine presenting woman, like I have had so many times people be to me like, oh well you don't look gay.
Like, right.
Like you don't look like you date a girl.
Yeah.
Like what does that mean? Like why is it like a look? Like there's what's it supposed to?
They're like put on boy shorts and chop your hair and like get an undercut, Harper.
Like that doesn't like no weird. Yeah. Like you have to like look a certain way and talk a certain way and act a certain way and have certain mannerisms and stuff to like be gay. It like makes it harder for like people to like fit into their own identity.
What do you guys wish the crusty Gen Xers understood about the sexuality spectrum and the fluidity of sexuality that your generation understands?
Honestly, for me, just that like someone's sexuality is like, I mean, we're talking about this like body image and stuff today, like earlier, like it is genuinely like one of the least important things about them, because like for a straight person, it is the least identifiable or like prominent or important thing about them. And that it's like, yes, it's important that like, we, I guess, categorize ourselves, like even if it's for like finding our like own communities or like feeling more in touch with our own identities, but that it really does not matter that much. And that like it is so fluid and like such a spectrum that like I think more people realize it than not, that like they're probably a little bit gay and that that's like fine. And that it's just like, I don't know, like the fluid sexuality and stuff and like the prevalence of like more fluid sexuality within people is just normal and like it should be. And like doesn't need to be like,
it's been oppressed for like years.
And like it's important that we like talk about it and bring attention to it, but also like it isn't like, it doesn't need to be like a thing. Like it's just like somebody's sexuality is just so like mundane.
Right.
Like I feel like what we've gathered is like it's great to have these labels if you need them. Like if you need to say I'm bi or I'm pansexual or whatever. But I think we also would be better off if we didn't have them and if we didn't think about people in terms of labels or and try to put people
we just stop putting people in boxes.
Right. Yeah. If we want to like label ourselves for ourselves, that's one thing, but like we not need to label other people for our own understanding.
Yeah, I think a big thing that I've always
in terms of sexuality. Yeah.
Like I like completely
people.
I like completely agree with what Harper said, and like how we just this whole time we've been talking about how we should normalize fluidity and just like letting people like explore themselves without like putting them in a box. Like, Harper was like, I'm a lesbian for like 2 years. And then she was like, wait, why did I even like identify as lesbian? Like I'd never even like been with a man. And now she's like, been with guys, and she's like, okay, like whatever, like it's like, why did we have to like categorize ourselves? But like we felt the pressure to, which it sucks. But it's also just like another factor that we were were kind of just talking about is it is not important, but it's important to yourself and yourself only. Like it's a very personal thing that you explore. If you are having sex with someone of the same sex or someone of the opposite sex, that's no one's business but your own. Like, you know, like it's really not. So it's like, who cares? Like, why do we feel that if it's not
why do you feel so entitled to understanding someone else's sex life?
Like, right, exactly. When it doesn't affect, like, I've like literally like had people just like in conversation before at like parties and just like social settings be like, you know, are you bi? Yeah. Are you straight? Like whatever. And it always just like throws me off. It throws me off because I'm like, wait, why do you care? Like I'm like,
affect this conversation going forward.
No, it won't. Like, and it's also like it. Let's say you were talking to someone that just had like prejudice towards like, you know, people that weren't heterosexual, and you like said something about like how you'd been with like, you know, someone of the same sex, and they suddenly were like taken aback and started kind of being like, wait, like, are you gay? Like, whatever, being weird towards you, and then you're like, no, dude, like, I'm just kidding. Like, I'm straight. Just step back and like they'll be like, oh, okay. You know, like they'll be like, oh, okay, like, and they'll be like completely fine with it. They wouldn't have known different. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not their business. They don't like, you could just lie about it if it makes you feel more comfortable. Cause at the end of the day, like, it's your life, it's your journey. Like, it's not politics. It's not.
And like, I feel like just because like, yes, like I do like women as well. Like I shouldn't have to walk around with like a big sign on me that's like, oh, gay, bisexual. Like, no, like that's just so unnecessary. Like it literally is just such an unimportant aspect of myself and something that like I am able to be concerned about, but like why other people have to be is like just beyond me.
No, it's like, is Harper gay? Is she straight? Is she bi? No, she's a young woman like expressing her sexuality.
Yeah, like I'm literally
want to one day or to the next. Who cares?
Like a lot of people don't even know what they are still.
Like express their sexuality, however.
Right.
You know?
Like exactly. It's like we said, like you had that term that was like omnosexual or whatever it was, where it was like you're ever changing. Like that's just like sexuality. Abrosexual. Like we're all like always changing. Like it's so stupid that you would just confine yourself to like a box, you know? Like it's just, and it's also like, can we just go back to the term like you don't know until you try? Like how can people be like,
not until you try?
Like it's like how can you be like, you know, oh no, like I'm definitely super straight, but it's like you've never known anything else and you've never seen anything but straight couples in your life, you know, which was like you growing up, you know, like I'm sure there was like way more, you know, Bob and Janies than like Janie and Janies in the world. So it's like that's what you grow up on. Like that's what you're like, that's why you ask me, you know, if my friends are gay, because that's just like what you grew up socially constructed to like ask.
And there was just no that's okay, honey. There's just no fluidity. It was like there were gay people, there were straight people, and no one just kind of like moved in between things.
People did. No one would admit to it. No one would admit to it, right?
Just didn't know that. It was like no one just like tried this and tried that and then like moved in between things and went out with this person one day, went out with this person the other day, which is great and makes so much sense, you know? And like you just, like you said, like we were saying, like express their sexuality however they want on whatever day. But like we just had, here's the hard line. And if you happen to go over this line, well, you better stay there because this is who you are now, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we were so scared of the consequences, like socially.
Yeah. And it's like weird too, because I noticed like with other straight people, like it's almost like offends people that like I don't feel a need to label myself. Like I'll like, you know, talk about like
because it's powerful.
Right. Like I've been with women, like I've been with men, like I'll continue to like, you know, explore that and be with both. And I'll be like, but I don't really like label myself. Like I don't think it's important. And then people like instinct is to always just be like, so you're bi.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if you want to say that, go straight.
But then it's like, what if we dated like someone that was like identified as trans one day, then you're not bi anymore, right? You're like something else because they have a term. Yeah, like they have a term for everything. Like it's ridiculous.
Like people.
So what's the term if you then? What's the term if you date trans people then? I don't know this. Sorry.
Well, there's kind of some like discourse between
like everything, like you like everyone and everything.
Bisexual is like by definition like dating like men and women. It doesn't like specify any like also trans women, also trans men.
Even though trans women and men are still men and women. So like
so I feel like it's
the labels
assumed.
They cross over each other, you know?
I think the only difference with like pansexual is that like that assumes or like specifies by definition that you would also date somebody that doesn't identify as male or woman. So like somebody that's like, non-binary or gender fluid or something. Even though I feel like under bisexuality, like you can do the same thing. Like I wouldn't refer to
Labels are
myself.
so dumb.
I would refer to myself as bi before I referred to myself as pan. But like if I like met and fell in love with a trans person or a non-binary person, then like whatever, like I'd still be bi. It doesn't like matter.
Again, if you go back to the basics, like mac and cheese is an entree, but it's also a pasta. Like whatever, like potato.
Your new favorite phrase is potato. You've been
I've only said it like one other time.
You've said it like 3 times. I love that. Yeah, I was going to ask you guys what pansexual was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it's still some discourse like
about
around it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think like the way that I see it, like it is inclusive between like trans men and women because trans women are men and women. So it's weird to like have to.
I agree.
It's like, let's set them apart.
Yeah, like
yeah, it's right. Why are we othering them?
It seems exclusionary and like I don't know, like just kind of like weird.
Is there a term for someone who only loves their she of who?
You,
Lindsay Bruno.
Lindsay Brunoism.
This was really informative. I think you probably helped some Gen Xers here. Really, I think you really helped some Gen Xers here understand themselves and some terms, and maybe even be a little bit more appropriate in some conversations. I know you helped me, and I love you both. And I'll never label you again.
Love you.
I'll never label you again.
We'll talk in a second because you're right across the hall. Okay, bye.
Bye. Wait, she didn't ask us what we were overthinking. Come back.